You're a Jags fan, you're a football fan, you click this video, you're listening to this podcast, subscribe, like the video, find us on your preferred podcast streaming platform. Let's go. What is he doing? Nah, bro, I think he's legit. You just can't do that in that situation. Nah, you couldn't be more wrong. Yeah, I could agree with that. This is the Poochie Podcast. What is going on, Pooch Crew? Episode 141 at you right now. Going to recap the Jaguars-Chiefs game from this past Sunday, and Jaguars on a bye this week, so not much to look ahead to. We'll go through some of our thoughts heading into the bye week and coming out of the bye week and other thoughts around the NFL, but let's welcome Kyle back onto the show. Kyle, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
For sure. So Jaguars 17, Chiefs 27. They win a 10-point game. Chiefs cover the spread by the hook, a half point. They get the job done, but pretty much what we saw in that game on Sunday is kind of what we expected to see and what we talked about last week in the podcast when we were talking about previewing game, what the Chiefs brought to the table offensively and so on. But overall thoughts from you on the Jags-Chiefs game this last week.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was a lot closer than I thought it would be. I feel like the Jaguars slowed their offense down much more than I thought they would, forcing 3 turnovers, no turnovers of our own. So, winning the turnover battle by 3, happy with that. A lot of frustrating parts of the game, mainly the first half offensively. But, all in all, the takeaway is that was a pretty solid performance. Did a lot of things right, and a couple things go our way. Probably a tied ball game there.
Yeah, it's not often that you win the turnover battle and you lose the game like they did, but that's what the Chiefs are capable of, and that's why they're such a good team. They're able to overcome those types of mistakes. Not only the Jaguars getting 3 turnovers, but opening up the game with an onside kick and recovering it right near the 45-yard line. They had about 25, 30 yards to go to get into field goal range. Weren't able to do it. They end up having to punt the ball away back to the Chiefs. But it was kind of inspiring and encouraging to see the Jaguars make a play like that. When you see a play like that, an onside kick to start the game, a little gimmicky, you don't see that often. Is that a coach or is that a team that says, okay, we're obviously not the better team here, so we're going to have to pull out some tricks to win the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's them trying to steal a possession. Chiefs want to get the ball first. I think they won the toss and elected to receive. They wanted to get the ball first, probably get on the board and set the tone early. You do that onside kick. If it doesn't work out, you're an idiot. If it works out, you're a genius. One of those things. I typically side on the aggressive side of this type of stuff. So if it doesn't work out, it's all good. But essentially you get the ball, like you said, right at midfield, and then you get the ball to start the second half. That's stealing a possession.
And it's not like it really was going to put the Jaguars behind the 8 ball to begin with, because if they do recover it, you're likely assuming, okay, this Chiefs offense is going to be able to move the ball as it is. So if the Chiefs did recover it, yeah, you're giving them a short field, but hell, we've seen Patrick Mahomes go 13 seconds and get a field goal at the end of regulation to send a game to overtime. And we saw that in the AFC divisional round last year. So it's not like this offense is enigmatic or whatever it's called, but they're very, what's the word there?
I think you're looking for anemic, maybe.
Anemic. Yeah, that's a good word. Buzzword of the day, anemic. But they're going to move the ball nonetheless, and we saw that throughout the entire game. So going for that onside kick there, you're obviously trying to create a spark. You're obviously trying to quiet a hostile environment. Kansas City, notoriously known as one of the tougher environments to play in. So it was great to see that happen. Jaguars end up punting it, and the Chiefs do exactly what we thought, move the ball down the field, and the Jaguars come up with a takeaway on that very possession. Devin Lloyd recovering a fumble going in the other direction. So there, the Jaguars kind of stealing 2 possessions. But realistically, when you keep the Chiefs off the board on an offensive possession, that almost feels like stealing a possession.
Yeah, what's frustrating is, we get the ball in great field position to start the drive. We're kind of in the middle of the field. It's, do you go for it? Do you not? Okay, we got the ball. It didn't work out. Let's punt. But what really frustrates me is we punt from our own 40, I believe, or from their 40, I believe it was.
We punt it from the Kansas City 44-yard line.
Okay, so essentially Would have been a long field goal. Obviously, we saw our field goal kicker not that great. We punt it right into the end zone. Like, what are we doing? It was a net of like 24 yards after the touchback. It just, that type of stuff frustrates me. And then it happened again on our second drive. We had the huge fumble, couldn't move the ball. We punt it right into the end zone, I think from like the 50-yard line or the 45-yard line. It was another net of 25. I mean, that's infuriating. If you cannot get the ball either out of bounds or, to be fair, caught within the 20-yard line, 15-yard line, or downed, I mean, you really got to practice special teams more, figure out a game plan. It doesn't seem – and I know that might be nitpicky, but when you punt it and the net is 25 yards, it's almost like, well, why wouldn't we just go for it?
Well, and I'm glad you just brought up that very point, because it was 4th and 2 when the Jaguars punted from the Kansas City 44. And you just, 10 minutes ago, you saw your team recover an onside kick. So you kind of set the tone that you're going to make some risky calls and some aggressive calls. But then to punt it from the 44 out on a 4th and 2, you weigh like the risk reward,
Right.
a 24-yard net punt versus a 4th and 2 conversion. In my eyes, it makes sense to go for it there, even if not kicking a field goal. You go for the first down there, just because, again, same principle as we talked about with the opening kickoff. The length of the field for the Chiefs doesn't matter. What matters is keeping them off the field to begin with. So you're punting it to give them the ball back when you could go for it and kill more clock, pick up more yards, and so on.
I mean, that type of stuff just pisses me off. It seems so obvious. And when analytics and this kind of risk reward first came onto the scene, one of the big things was punting in between the 40-yard lines and risking going for it if all you're going to do is punt it right into the end zone and give them the ball in the 20. I mean, if the punt returner catches it, he's calling a fair catch. There's going to be no chance for a return given the short field. I mean, that's just sloppy coaching. I would be telling the punter, kick it anywhere but into the end zone.
And let's talk about this. We just talked about the 4th down calls, but Jaguars 4 for 14 on 3rd down conversions. Chiefs 7 of 10. I think that just goes back to what the Chiefs are capable of: extending drives, not really getting into holes. The Chiefs were 1 for 1 on 4th downs. The Jags were 2 for 2 on fourth downs, which was inspiring to see. But 4 for 14 on 3rd downs is not good by any metric. So you like to see the Jaguars, and I'd have to go back and look at exact yardage, but getting into 14 3rd down opportunities and only converting 4 of them, you're not doing anything to help your offense extend drives.
No, it's frustrating. And I mean, kind of piggybacking on that, our first 5 drives were 5 plays, 4 plays, 3 plays, 7 plays, 3 plays. So, not extending it. We've talked before about Trevor Lawrence and the running game being able to keep the team on the field and extend, or, keeping the clock ticking and stuff. In the first half, we did not do that. It's actually kind of crazy. We had 11 total drives in the game. 8 of them were in the first half, which is insane. 8 drives in the first half. But again, when you have 5, 4, 3, 7, 3 to start the game, that's not taking a lot of time away. And like you mentioned, keeping Patrick Mahomes off the field, you're just giving the ball right back to him.
And I do want to talk about this first half real quick, simply because I feel like if things had gone differently in the first half, the entire game changes. Granted, the Chiefs likely still win. It felt like the Jags were playing catch up the entire game, just from missed opportunities. We talked about the onside kick to start, the fumble on the Chiefs' first offensive possession. Then towards the end, following a Chiefs punt, you have a missed field goal, a 52-yard field goal, albeit, but still, you're in the NFL. You expect to make your kicks. That would have had the Jags down 7-3. 3 plays later, after the missed kick, the Chiefs capitalized, touchdown, 14-0. Next drive, Jags punt, Chiefs punt, Jags punt, and then Chiefs 8 plays, 86-yard touchdown. So you go down 20-0. You're thinking to yourself, okay, yeah, this game's over. And by all accounts, it was. It felt pretty much over at that point. But the Jaguars, with less than 50 seconds left before the half, muster up enough talent, enough skill, good play calling, whatever it is, get down the field, score a touchdown right before the half to go down 20-7. What were your thoughts there right before the half? What did you see from the team kind of approaching halftime?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And it's not just the Jaguars, but teams in general. They can stall the whole half. And then right before the half, you put together, what was it, a 5-play, 35-second, 61-yard drive. That's probably some soft defense being played, but it's more of the aggressiveness and the mindset, okay, we got to score. I think that plays a factor into getting the points. I did want to say something that I noticed, not a big deal, but just again on the special teams, that punt that we actually had a good punt, a 62-yard punt, and Tony kind of scooped it up. Like it looked like he was going to let it bounce. And I don't know who the defender was, but he kind of turned his back to Tony to look at the ball as it was bouncing, and Tony scooped the ball up and got like 7 yards. The ball probably would have trickled right down to the goal line. So that defender needs to, instead of kind of leaving Tony unguarded, needs to push him out of the way. Again, I'm not a professional special teams coach. I don't know what goes on in these meetings, but you have to start doing every little thing right, especially if you're not a good team, to keep yourself in these games. Didn't really, matter too much in the grand scheme of things, but it was just something I noticed.
Yeah, a savvy play by Tony there. He was near the sideline too, so if anything, pick up the ball and go out of bounds. Obviously, it's a risky play.
It was. Not saying it was smart on his part, but it shouldn't have even been an option for him to get to the ball.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these gunners on special teams, you don't see that typically happen often. If the receiver doesn't pick it up on the first bounce, if not catch it in the air, you kind of get the feeling they're not going to touch it anyway. But I agree, he got clobbered kind of 5 yards after he picked it up, but still, yeah, it goes back to doing the little things right and making sure he doesn't even pick up that ball to begin with. So he picks up that ball. The Chiefs, go down, score a touchdown, pretty big touchdown too. 86-yard drive, or 86-yard 2-minute and 35-second drive going into the half. Well, Jaguars score their own touchdown and the Chiefs fumble the ensuing kickoff. Jaguars get the ball with 8 seconds left, do a quick play. I think it was to Zay Jones towards the sideline, pick up an extra 10 yards, and a 41-yard field goal, again, missed by Riley Patterson. So now we're in a situation where the Jaguars are down 20-7 at halftime, and the game easily could be 20-13. If he makes one of them, it's 20-10. You're in the same boat as you were last week against the Raiders. But
back too, and you're getting the ball back.
So let's get to the second half real quick, because you mentioned only 3 drives in the second half. A lot of that due to the opening drive of the second half. The Jaguars do. I can't remember the last time I saw the Jaguars do this. 17 plays, 58 yards, 9 minutes and 14 seconds. That
doesn't even seem like it should be possible. That many plays for only 58 yards. It's not like they were starting at their own 5 or anything.
Yeah, I mean, in that drive, you had a 3rd and 7 conversion, a 4th and 2 conversion, a 3rd and 5 conversion, and a 4th and then you had a 2nd and goal conversion for a touchdown that was nullified by an ineligible man downfield, which Cam Robinson looked like he was trying to play tight end. I mean, it wasn't
bad.
It wasn't even close.
He was 2 yards into the end zone. He thought it was a run play. Clearly took away a touchdown off the board, ended up getting a field goal, right?
Yeah, so I guess my point to that is it was great to see the Jaguars put together that kind of drive, but to waste 9 minutes and go 17 plays and, all that good stuff and to only get 3 points out of it, they checked the box of keeping Mahomes off the field, but they didn't check the box of matching his touchdowns, because the Chiefs rarely are going to get field goals. It seems like they're touchdown or bust kind of team. I will say, as far as the defense goes, letting up 27 points to the Chiefs isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. Obviously, game flow has a lot to do with that. The Chiefs necessarily weren't playing from behind at all. They weren't necessarily playing to put up big points. But the Chiefs had more punts in that game, it felt like, than they've probably had in a game all season. So it was nice to see the defense step up a little bit. But Patrick Mahomes did what Patrick Mahomes does. Jaguars go down and get a field goal. Chiefs come right back, 10 plays, 75 yards, 5 minutes, touchdown, end of the quarter, right? So 2 drives in the entire third quarter, and the Chiefs come out +4 in point differential in that quarter after the Jaguars dominated that opening drive. Jaguars get the ball back, 6 plays, 3.5 minutes, 24 yards. Again, extending drives, milking the clock, and they end up punting it. So, they're down 17. They punt the ball. Chiefs get Chiefs throw an interception. Jaguars score a touchdown. At this point, it's 6 minutes left in the game. It's all but over, 10 points down at that point. But overall thoughts, I guess, of the Jaguars in this game. I know you kind of touched on your thoughts on the game, like the game flow, but what you see from the Jags, how do you feel about them as a team going up against what we would predict to be an AFC Championship contender?
Yeah, like I said to start the show, I mean, happy with kind of how the defense played. I think we gave up 486 yards. You would think, maybe more than 27 points if you're giving up 486 yards, as well as +3 in the turnover differential. So, I mean, we had 3.5 more minutes of time in possession too or so. Usually those stats will indicate, the time in possession of the turnover battle indicates a winning team. However, we gave up 5 sacks. We got 0 sacks on them. They had 0 penalties. We only had 5, and I don't think it was even like an unfairly called game, to be honest. The Chiefs just didn't make many mistakes. On the first drive, Christian Kirk had a huge drop, which he had a great game, so I'm not trying to bash him, but it was a 30-yard pass down the left sideline. The only thing you could say is Lawrence could have put it to his outside shoulder. He kind of had to turn back this way, but it hit him right here. He should have caught that. I think that really took the air out of that first drive. So that was tough to see. Again, little things, and I'm not trying to be too nitpicky, but like I said, if you're not a great team, and the thing is, the great teams do all the little things correctly. They don't make dumb special teams errors. They don't drop passes. I mean, that's the main thing. They help their quarterback out. So overall, a lot better than I thought the game would go. The stats don't even read that bad, honestly. We couldn't get the rush going, but like you mentioned, game flow probably had something to do with that. We only had 75 rushing yards. We had Hasty in there a couple times, which didn't work out. You'd like to see ETN pretty much taking every snap. Hasty had a drop pass on 3rd down, which hurt. They had 155 rushing yards, which is, I feel like, a lot for them. I'm not sure what their season stats are, but Mahomes, I've been big on the quarterback running lately. That's kind of been my new slant, if you will, this year, that if you're an offensive coordinator, having the quarterback being able to run as a bailout is huge. Mahomes picked up some first downs, extended the drives. Lawrence did have some good runs. I don't like the 3rd and short designed run we did to him to the right side. I think it was on the 2nd drive. Just not the time to call that. I mean, I've been big on Lawrence running, but it's more quarterback sneaks or, pocket breakdown running, not the designed runs. I don't think we need to be doing that with him.
Yeah, and Mahomes, 7 carries for 39 yards. There was a crucial 3rd down at the beginning of the game on that first drive, which then turned into the fumble. But it was like 3rd and 8, and Mahomes scrambled for about 20 yards for a first down, and that's where he's dangerous, and that's how the Chiefs can be so good. But 39 yards total on 7 carries. Interesting enough, the only way Clyde Edwards-Helaire found his way onto the stat sheet was 2 targets in the receiving game for 0 catches and 0 yards. He had 0 rushing attempts. Isaiah Pacheco had all the rushing attempts. Well, most of them, 16. Tony had 2. McKinnon had 1, but Pacheco, 16 carries, 82 yards. In ETN, only 11 carries, which I thought was interesting because last week he had 28. And the week before that, I'm pretty sure he had 24. So he's been consistently over 20 carries a game. Obviously, you're trying to match the game flow and what the opposition's doing. But in a game where you're trying to milk the clock and keep the opposition off the field, you'd like to see them run the ball more, but they simply just couldn't get it going. You mentioned the 5 sacks. We talked about that last week with, Chris Jones up front causing havoc, and he did exactly that. He caused problems in both the run game and the pass game for the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, while he didn't look comfortable really throughout the game, he did have a clean game, 0 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, 260 yards on about 75% completion percentage. So he did, in my opinion, outside of scoring more touchdowns to close drives, he did what you would have expected him to do in this style game. So I was pleased with his performance in this game. But overall, if you play that type of game against a average team or a below average team in the league, you're going to win those types of games. But you're not going to do that against a team like the Chiefs or the Bills or the Ravens, who the Jags have coming up in 2 weeks from now. So they're still a young team, an inexperienced team, and a below average team by all accounts. But I think the signs are pointing up. We didn't go in there and get humiliated, which obviously it sucks to be a fan of a team that has to kind of use that as a moral victory. Mm-hmm. But from what we've seen this team in the past go into some hostile environments and lose big time. The team kept it together, held their own. But it really did come down to, like we mentioned last week, the Chiefs just have more athletes, more talent all over the field. Travis Kelce, 6 catches, 81 yards and a touchdown, but it didn't necessarily feel like he was that much of a difference maker. He wasn't dominating the game like we saw Davante Adams do 2 weeks ago. this was an interesting game in that it almost felt like a lot of the Chiefs receivers were contributing. You had Kelsey with 6 catches, Valdez-Scantling 3 catches, Kadarius Toney with 4, Jerick McKinnon 6 catches out of the backfield, which has always been a weak spot for the Jags, has been receivers, running backs out of the backfield in the receiving game. And Juju Smith-Schuster with 2 catches. He went out of the game early. Thoughts on Andre Cisco defensively quickly before we move forward? Second highest graded defensive player in week 10 across the NFL. Second highest graded player by Pro Football Focus. But thoughts on how Cisco played in that game?
He's been good. He had the interception, right, which I think is his 3rd of the year. Real quick, just back to Mahomes. He hit 9 receivers in the first half, which is pretty crazy to do in the first half, 9 different receivers. So, like you mentioned, spreading the ball. But yeah, Cisco's been good. He had that interception. He also had that hit on Juju Smith-Schuster, which I'm happy was not called. It probably should have been, but we got lucky that wasn't called a helmet-to-helmet because it looked pretty obvious that it was. Obviously not a dirty play. Didn't seem like he was trying to hurt anybody. Just kind of happened. That was on 3rd down, and they ended up punting. So just to kind of reference that, sometimes things do go your way. But, yeah, all in all, he's been pretty good. Still not thrilled with the secondary to some extent, but it's also been some of the linebackers too getting beat on either finding the zone or the linebackers just getting beat. Noah Gray had the big touchdown to the outside. I think we double teamed Kelsey, and he just slipped on by everybody.
And I will mention this post game. Doug Peterson came out and talked about some headset malfunctions that the defense was experiencing on that first touchdown for the Chiefs. Back-to-back plays, the defense couldn't get the calls in. The headsets were not working. They were trying to signal from the sideline. So they mentioned, if you're curious why Toney was 25 yards wide open, they had the defense running 2 separate schemes, which, shit like that happens. So it is what it is. Granted, the Chiefs were going to score anyway. I wouldn't say that was the reason they lost. Just an unfortunate event there. You mentioned the Cisco no call on the helmet-to-helmet. He also had another big hit on MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, about 10 minutes game time later. That didn't get called either. And when you looked at the replay, it didn't look like he was necessarily launching. The second one looked more like a launch than the first one did, but neither of them looked like he was leading with the helmet or spearing or with mal intent in either of those hits. They were just big hits, and sometimes that's football. And Cisco ball hawk gets the interception, which was nice to, even though the Chiefs won, nice to see Patrick Mahomes make a little bit of a mistake there. So overall, I'll say I'm pleased with just keeping it close and competitive. I don't want to say it felt like we gave this game away because it's very rare for a team to give a game away to the Chiefs. But it did feel like we just didn't capitalize on our opportunities, and that's what led to the loss.
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap this up, that's the first game that we have not led in this year, that we have not held the lead, and it's our first 2-score loss. So the record sucks. It's not fun losing, but if there's any sort of silver lining, it's that we're not getting killed by 2 or 3 touchdowns. We're hanging in the games. One of the best teams in the league lost by 10 points. Nothing to be too upset about.
Yeah, exactly. Perfectly put. And we'll see if the Jaguars can kind of play a similar style game when they have the Ravens coming in 2 weeks, but we'll kind of cross that bridge in next week's episode. But the Jaguars bye coming up in week 11, no game this week. Always kind of bittersweet when your team's on a bye because football Sunday rolls around. You don't really have a rooting interest in your team outside of fantasy, maybe daily fantasy, maybe some bets getting on the books as well. But the Jaguars bye week, it's not like they're an injured team. Typically the bye, you're looking at injuries that could get corrected, people coming back after the bye. But overall, going into the bye, they're going to have 7 games after the bye. Thoughts on the Jags heading into the bye for, I guess, first half of the season for them, and maybe coming out of the bye, what we want to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they take the time to kind of look at some of these small errors and details that we've been talking about. Maybe formulate better first half drives, try to figure out how to get on the board a little quicker. Yeah, I think it's just kind of a rest and recovery, watch some game film. There's no huge glaring issues, it seems like. It's just all collectively not enough. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, if we just had this or if we just had that. It's kind of all there. It just isn't to this extent that we need it to be.
Yeah, it's like cooking a 5-star dish with 2-star ingredients right now, and it's not one thing you're trying to pick out that's the problem. But at the same time, we're seeing growth. Tyson Campbell is a huge piece that I've been happy with. Hell, even Trevor Lawrence has shown progress and growth. Travis Etienne has kind of come into his own as the number one guy. Christian Kirk potentially having his best game against the Chiefs this past week. Zay Jones getting involved. Obviously, Evan Ingram has been a bright spot for this team. So offensively, we've beat this drum for the first 9 weeks of the season, first 10 weeks of the season. There's been a lot of players doing a lot of right things. They're just not doing them at the same time, and that's leading to bad results. So defensively, what I will say is ironic is I've been kind of questioning the defense for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks now. I have started seeing some Twitter chatter about Mike Caldwell and some other fans getting displeased with his defensive schemes. And I think it's finally time for people to start holding him accountable because, like I said a few weeks ago, the Jaguars have scored a lot of touchdowns, a lot of points at the end of games, and the defense has then gone and let them score. We saw it at the end of the Broncos game. We saw it at the end of the Colts game. At the end of the Giants game was another one. So the defense seems like late in the fourth quarter, they're going to need to work on keeping the defense together and playing strong. I think that might be a depth issue, and the team just not having depth at some key positions. But what I will say is, if there are holes on this team, now is not the time to be fixing them. Anyone good enough to play in this league is likely already on a team if they're going to be a starter. So it's not like anything, there's not a gold mine in free agency for us to go find someone that's going to make an immediate impact. So I think it's just come out of the bye week. We have the Ravens to start off after the bye week, and then the Lions. Let's do this exercise real quick. Let's look at the 7 games following the bye and just kind of talk about expectations over the 7 games, maybe as a whole on a macro level, not micro. Ravens, Lions, Titans, Cowboys, Jets, Texans, Titans. So 7 games, what would you deem to maybe be like a successful end to the season for this team?
What is that? 3 division games in there?
Yeah, you have 2 Titans and 1 Texans.
Yeah, I think we got to win 2 of those games somehow. I don't know. Overall, win 3 games total, 2 division games and 3 total of the 7 left. Try to finish the season. What would that put us at, 6-11?
Yeah, 6-11.
Yeah, I think if you go 6-11, and again, a lot of close games, you can kind of use that going into the next year. Ideally, we'd like to win them all, but we do have the Ravens and the Titans, obviously, Cowboys, but Packers have looked like ass, and they just beat the Cowboys too. Obviously, they have Aaron Rodgers, but they're not doing anything special really, and they were able to beat the Cowboys. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'd like to continue seeing Trevor throw the ball. I'd like to continue, acting like we're in the race for the playoffs, just so we don't do anything dumb or take our foot off the gas or switch up personnel. Like Trevor needs to be working with everything that he's going to have going into next year.
Yeah, three wins, 3 and 4 to close the season, I think would be a fine goal to have, and I think that's a realistic goal to have, given what we've seen so far. We've seen them lose a lot of close games. Just looking at this, I think you have to beat the Lions and Texans first and foremost. Lions are 3 and 6. You can view them that they're on the same tier as you. Obviously, a rebuilding team, not with a new quarterback, but they're 3 and 6, and if you want to get out of that bottom, the bottom dweller category in the NFL, you have to beat the bottom dwellers and show that you're more dominant than them. I think you have to beat the Lions, and you have to avenge the loss to the Texans, which still boggles the mind to me. You got to figure out a way to beat them. You take 1 of 2 from the Titans, maybe. Maybe it's the home game, but we've shown that we kind of struggle with the Titans. But Ravens, Cowboys, those are 2 games that if we lose, we lose. Granted, both those are at home. So maybe the Jags are able to find a little home field magic in those games. And then you have the Jets on Thursday Night Football, which is going to be that Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson Bowl. First 2 picks from last year's draft in Thursday Night Football action. And the Jets are 6 and 3. So the Jets, and they have a real defense. Like they look like they're putting things together pretty well right now. So we'll see if that continues in through November into December. But yeah, 3 wins. I would love 4 wins I would take, but ultimately just beat the Lions and Texans, find another win in there somewhere. So anything else from you on the Jags before we move ahead?
No, not at all. I mean, I am that Cowboys game at home. I just prefer that one to be on the road because it's going to be a home game for the Cowboys. I feel like just coming to Jacksonville, which sucks to say, but you know how it is. Going to the games in Jacksonville and Cowboys fans are everywhere. So I wish we could say there's going to be a whole home field advantage there, but I'm not sure if that's the case.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks because I feel like that's the type of game where the Cowboys fans are going to be louder since it's a road game. They want to show up. They want to show out. If it's in Dallas, I was at the Dallas Jacksonville game 4 years ago in 2018, and it was quiet. Cowboys won like 41-3, but it wasn't like there was no point in the game where I was like, wow, this is a great home field advantage. Yeah, it's a nice stadium, but I feel like going on the road, you want to show out for your team. You want to take over the opposition's field, and Jacksonville is always a great place to do that for an opposing team's fan to do so here in Jacksonville. So we'll see how they close out the season, but let's get to some more NFL talk. Again, if you're listening, appreciate you listening. Like and subscribe. Kyle, go for it.
I was just going to say in this bye week, we got to try out some kickers. It's been so very, very clear that there's a issue in the NFL collectively. And me, you, and Goody were talking about it last week. A lot of missed extra points and the Bills and the Vikings game, right? Or was it Bills Vikings it was the Lions game. Whoever the Lions played, the Bears. Cairo Santos missed that. I think it was Cairo Santos.
Yeah, Cairo Santos.
I mean, you cannot be missing extra points, bro. Like I just don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand what they practice. I'm not saying it's easy. It's, I get it. We're sitting here on the couch saying they should make that, but the kicking is the one thing that is relatively unimpeded from the defense. And you've got to make those kicks. They are so big and they affect what you do the next time you have the ball. So I don't know. I'm a big special teams guy. I know it affects the game a lot more than people realize. And it's just frustrating seeing missed field goals because those are the things that keep you in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, 2 missed field goals by the Jags last week. That's 1 touchdown. So,
and then we had the touchdown called back. Luckily, he made the field goal, but you start adding up all the missed points you had, and you're right there in the game.
Well, that's 10 points right there. So, you take a field goal after a touchdown gets called back. That's a 4-point loss. Then you miss 2 field goals. That's a 6-point loss. So that's 10 points lost on missed opportunities for this football team. In that game against the Chiefs. So I completely agree. 2 missed field goals is equal to 1 touchdown, which obviously field goals, the range to kick those is a lot wider than scoring a touchdown. So you got to figure out a way to make those. I mean, the Jags cut Matthew Wright this past offseason, who just got a job with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he'll be kicking this week again, I think, for the Steelers. But
he kind of had an ugly performance, I think, through this past weekend.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, let me pull it up. I know he missed let me see.
Box score Steelers. I'm looking at it too now.
Yeah, he was 2 for 4 on field goals. I don't know about extra points, but
2 for 2 on extra points.
Okay, well at least he made those, but
yeah.
But yeah, man. So that's all I got on the Jags and everything for the bye week and all.
Hell, dude, the World Cup's coming up, so just go out there, find a soccer player or something, do something.
I don't know if it's that easy, but that's where I would start.
Yeah, it is crazy to me, like these teams like the Ravens, who we're going to see here in about a week and a half, how these teams just find these clutch kickers, and they stick with the team for so long. And the Jags had it, obviously, with Josh Scobie. Josh Lambo was a great kicker until he got injured. He never was right after that injury, but kickers are those positions where you might cycle through 4 or 5 of them in a 2-season span, but when you find the right one, they can last for the next 10, 12 years.
Yeah, I mean, definitely underappreciated. It's kind of like insurance. You don't really think about it till you need it. So,
and they don't really get mentioned until they miss. So
yeah,
it's like an offensive lineman. But let's look elsewhere in the NFL. Week 10 is over. It's concluded. Some of the standings, they've gotten bunched up. As you mentioned, the Packers beating the Cowboys. You had the Lions beating the Bears in a close game. What other games did we have? We had the Vikings beating the Bills. I mean, then the Commanders beating the Eagles. So a lot of favorites lost this week. But what are we buying after week 10 in the NFL?
I mean, I'm going to do 2 things. One is, you would say, well, duh, but the Vikings, I don't know if we had shown them a ton of love. I know 2 weeks ago, whoever they played, I was like, it's going to be a big test to see if they, are really about it. Obviously, upsetting the Bills was incredible. Great game. And, I don't know. I think that they're good. I think they're just gelling very well currently. That was a huge statement win. It looks like the NFC North is probably theirs for the taking. With the Packers not doing great. Yeah, they're like 4 games ahead. So they're going to have a good seeding. So definitely the Vikings. And I think Tuanon. I think I might be part of Tuanon. I've been on the boards. I think I'm kind of getting in there, buying the hype for a potential MVP. He throws a great ball. Of course, it doesn't hurt that he's got 2 great wide receivers. But, with the addition of Jeff Wilson Jr., and Mostert is still a good running back. I think he's got weapons around him. So I'm really liking Tuanon for a potential MVP winner.
Yeah, Dolphins 39, Browns 17, just a huge victory. That was my lock of the week last week, actually, on this podcast. Was the Dolphins over the Browns on a 3.5 point spread. So I'm high on the Dolphins as well. So I'm happy to hear you say that. I'm going to buy this kind of is painful to say because I don't want to be like the early adapter to this movement, but that the Bucks are going to be okay and that the Bucks are back.
I almost said that too.
What's up?
I said I almost said that too. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, they beat the Seahawks, and the Seahawks have been like the Cinderella team of the season. So beating them isn't like the great, you're not claiming Super Bowl championship after that win, but it's still a huge win nonetheless. The Seahawks at the time were 6-3. Now they're 6-4, but Bucks get back to 500. They have a bye week this week as well, and then they come out against the Browns and the Saints. So fully expect the Bucks to be at 7-5. Midway through September, they have a tough game against the Niners in San Francisco. Got to travel out west, but then they host the Bengals. Tough game there. And they end with the Cardinals, Panthers, Falcons, which is maybe one of the easier 3-game stretches to end on, which is weird to say because the Cardinals are in there. But I think they have some winnable games here down the stretch, especially for the Bucks. And similar to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, it always feels like at a certain point in the season, those Tom Brady teams or those Aaron Rodgers teams turn a corner, and I'm not ready to say I'm buying the Packers like I am with the Bucks, just because what we've seen from the Packers has been so disheveled. But I will say that the Bucks I think are back. So
as well as the division. The Bucks are lucky they play in a shitbag division, so gives them certainly a chance to win it. Whereas the Packers would need to probably get the wild card.
Yeah. And right now, I'm not looking at the full standings, but right now, I think in the NFC, I think all of the NFC East would be in the playoffs if it started today.
I think so. It depends on the Commanders, who are 5-5, but I think they would all be because
right. Right now, it
would be the Eagles, Vikings, Bucks, Seahawks as the division winners, and then every other team in the NFC East would make it as the wild card.
Yeah. And I think the same can be said for the AFC.
Actually, no, excuse me. The 49ers are 5-4, so I guess they would make it ahead of the
Commanders. So I guess we'll see what happens after the bye week.
Yep.
Since the Commanders are on their bye week. So, yeah, just interesting story there. And then same for the AFC East. I'm pretty sure right now all of the AFC East would be in it. You'd have the Chiefs, the Dolphins, the Titans, and the Ravens as divisional winners, but then you'd have the Jets, Bills, and Patriots as the wild card teams at the moment, I believe.
It would depend on the tiebreaker for the Patriots, Bengals, and Chargers because they all have the same record.
Yeah, so that's all 4 teams from a division have never made the playoffs. Obviously, the extra wild card spot just opened up, I think, 2 years ago. So there hasn't been that many opportunities for it. But for it to be this close right now with 2 divisions and separate conferences is pretty impressive. I don't expect it to last in either conference. I do think eventually we'll see a drop off from the Patriots and Jets, and I do think we'll see a drop off from the Commanders. But Taylor Heineke, we totally missed him on the bye. Are we buying Taylor Heineke?
Yeah, you're right. We did miss that. We got to.
Got to buy Taylor Heineke going in, handing the Eagles their first loss of the season. The way he did, just such a funny game to watch too. They just ran the ball and ran the ball more. And Brian Robinson, and then they threw it when they needed to. Interesting game there. What's up?
Old Dominion's very own, right? Taylor Heineke, one of the few players from Old Dominion.
Go Monarchs. Did he go to ODU?
I think so.
All right, there you go. Fun facts. So all that being said, with the buys, what are we selling after week 10? Anything we're selling?
Trying to think if there was anything really big. Cowboys had a disappointing loss. Bills had a disappointing loss. I don't think there's anything really to worry about too much there. I don't know. What do you got? What do you think is kind of on the sell block?
I'm thinking Chargers, to be honest. I think this was an opportunity for them to come out and get a statement win. They're sitting at 5-4, but the road doesn't necessarily get easier for them. They have the Chiefs coming up this week. The Cardinals, even though that's a winnable game, it's in Arizona. Should beat the Raiders. Then you have the Dolphins. You have the Rams still. So I don't know. The Chargers are just interesting to me. They don't really have any statement wins. They're 5 wins this season. Here are their 5 wins: the Raiders, who are I think 2-7, the Texans, who are 1-7-1, the Browns, who are like 3-7, the Broncos, who are 3-7, and the Falcons, who are like 4-5. So the Chargers have done nothing impressive, and every opportunity they've had to do something impressive, which is limited because their schedule is shit, they lose to the Niners and they lose to the Chiefs the first time around. So I'll sell the Chargers, and there was one more I wanted to sell. Oh, Josh McDaniels and the Raiders. He's got to go.
He's got to go. But did you see the thing today?
No, what happened?
Something about I don't know if there's a buyout or what, but they literally can't afford to fire him or something. I don't know the exact details. I think it was real from what I saw, but yeah, they can't fire him, I guess, because they would owe him some money and they can't pay him out or something. I don't know. After
the John Gruden experiment and all the money they probably had to give to him, that's
a good call though. He's got to get out of there. I don't know what's going on. I feel bad for David Carr because he is a nice guy, but
Derek
Carr, David Carr, they're both nice guys, great brothers. But I don't know. I really don't know watching them. It's just frustrating. I'm so glad we beat them at least last week.
I think it's interesting we said it last week, Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and Derek Carr, those are all top 10, top 15 guys in their positions. And then Darren Waller. And obviously he's been injured, but it just doesn't make sense. That team doesn't make sense. If any of the divisions we were expecting all teams to make it to the playoffs, it would have been the AFC West. But the Broncos and the Raiders are by far the most disappointing teams, I think, in the AFC this season. Broncos lose 17-10 to the Titans. That was a game we had on our radar as an upset. Broncos led for most of the game, but the Titans were able to pull it out in the end and win 17-10 at home. So it will be interesting to see how the rest of this shakes out. But let's get to week 11. Week 11, best game of the week. I'll be honest with you, I haven't really looked at this week. It's been a busy week for me so far, and the Jags don't play, so I can't say I've looked too much at the games this week. But in your opinion, best game of week 11, excuse me.
So the best game that I got, hold on, I got to pull it up here too. Sorry, let me see. The Jets and the Patriots, I know they played a couple weeks ago, I believe. I think that should be another good game.
Mm-hmm.
There's no marquee matchups, really. The Titans-Packers tomorrow night, that could be a huge win. The Titans are definitely beatable. They've looked good, but they play kind of a slow-paced offense, and that's something that the Packers have kind of been doing this year. So I think that will be interesting. I almost think the Packers are going to win that game. And then, like I said, the Patriots and the Jets just for that division, which I was going to mention real quick if you don't mind. The AFC East, all of the teams are positive point differential. All 4 teams in the AFC East are positive point differentials. The leading team, the Miami Dolphins, have the lowest point differential of the 4, which is pretty wild. The Bills, who are in 3rd technically, have plus 99. The Dolphins in 1st are plus 11.
What are the Jets? Do you have the Jets in the Patriots?
The Jets are plus 20 and the Patriots are plus 37. I mean, in fairness, the Dolphins got spanked the 2 weeks. I think that Tua was out. I think the Bengals took it to them. But yeah, just an interesting stat to see when you got some divisions who only have, by the Bucks plus 3-point differential. Everybody else in that division is negative. So kind of interesting looking at it. So sorry for that tangent, but yeah, I think the Jets and the Patriots will be an interesting.
No, that's interesting because I'm pretty sure, and this might still hold true, the Jags are the only team in the South with a positive point differential, unless that changed this weekend.
No, that is true, and we're the only losing team with a positive point differential
in the NFL.
In the NFL.
Yay, Jacksonville! Yay,
put us on the board.
Let's go. Best game for me, I'm going to go Cowboys at Vikings.
Oh yeah.
I think obviously the records speak for themselves, 6-3 versus 8-1, but I think that's just going to be a fun game. I think these teams, they complement each other well for it to be a fun game. You have Justin Jefferson versus CeeDee Lamb. You have Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard versus Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison. On the defensive side of the ball, you have, Trevon Diggs. And then for the Vikings actually, this is interesting. I know they have good players. Don't get me wrong. But is Anthony Barr still on their team? Like, who is their good defensive player that
Kendricks? What's his first name?
Kendricks. Like, what's weird to me is typically with these types of teams, like, I could name you 4 guys on the Eagles defense right now.
Eric Kendricks.
What was it?
Eric Kendricks. He's the linebacker on the Vikings. He's been pretty good. They also got the
Patrick Peterson, right?
Patrick Peterson, yep. And then they got the safety Harrison Smith.
Yeah, Smith, yeah.
Yeah, he's not bad either.
Yeah, so that's an interesting team, but I just think that's going to be a fun game to watch. Kirk Cousins versus Dak Prescott. Obviously, a lot of people will give the nod to Dak Prescott, but will be fun to watch how that game unfolds. And you have the Chiefs and the Chargers. And after I just said I'm selling the Chargers, that'll just be a fun divisional matchup, obviously on Sunday Night Football. So for that game, Chiefs going to LA to play the Chargers there. So should be some fun games there. But what's your lock of the week? And I will say this real quick. Titans at 6-3 travel to Green Bay to play the 4-6 Packers, and the Packers are 3-point favorites.
Yeah. I was going to say I saw them at 1.5 point favorites, but maybe it changed. Maybe that's what they opened at.
This is probably what they opened at then.
Yeah, that's what they opened at. You're right. So I think the Bills, they opened at 6 or 7.5. Would have been nice to get them under a touchdown, but I think they're absolutely gonna take them to the woodshed and just crush them against the Browns. The Bills over the Browns.
Bills over the Browns as your lock. Another interesting line. Obviously, the Rams without Cooper Kupp. We missed them in sell of Week 10 because it's irrelevant to talk about them right now, but they'll be without Cooper Kupp. But Saints 3.5 point favorites against the Rams.
Yeah, and they're confirmed starting the Red Rifle again. So I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why you don't put Jameis in there. You're not playing for anything. Dalton's not going to be the guy going forward. J-Boo should be in there.
Are the Rams starting Jacksonville's own John Wolford?
Oh, is that the guy that started this past weekend against the Cardinals?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It would depend if Stafford's out of concussion protocol or not, I guess. But I would imagine after last week, probably not.
We talked last week of like these marquee games preseason that turn into be shitty matchups during the season. Rams, Cardinals last week. Supposed to be Matt Stafford versus Kyler Murray. Divisional game, NFC West. Playoff implications, divisional implications. And it turned out to be John Wolford versus Colt McCoy. So that's the epitome.
Backups.
What's up?
2 backups.
It's the epitome of that division and those teams right now. So my lock of the week, I'm going to go with the Washington Commanders over the Texans. The way the Washington Commanders are playing football, maybe this is a letdown spot coming off a huge emotional win over the Eagles. But I just don't see any style of football game that could be played where the Texans come out on top. Obviously 1-7-1 speaks for itself, but Commanders 3-point favorites at the Texans seems like a lock to me. Obviously we're going with some of those closer spread locks. So like not going with the the Ravens over the Panthers or anything like that, because I think that kind of goes without being said. But Bills over the Browns seems like put a point total on that. What would you put the spread at based on your feelings on how that game's going to go down?
I mean, it's only 7.5, but the Bills lost last week. I think what did Goody say? There's going to be a lot of snow. So, I mean, I don't know. That might work out actually in the Browns' favor, and maybe there being snow is having an effect on the spread. I would think the Bills are going to win by 2 touchdowns on that, maybe closer to -10 or so. But again, that snow factor would maybe lean heavier towards the Browns as an advantage. But I just think the Bills are going to get it done big time.
All right. Well, another interesting one here. Bengals only 3.5-point favorites over the Steelers. Feels like that's kind of mishandicapped. But anyways, Jeff Saturday gets his first win in his first game against the Raiders, 25-20, which is crazy because the last game he coached, which was a few weeks ago for a high school team, they lost the game like by 30. So then he comes into the NFL and wins by 5. So I don't know if that says more about Jeff Saturday's coaching abilities as a high schooler or a high school coach or the Raiders as an NFL team. But they have the Eagles this week, so I think the honeymoon's over for Jeff Saturday as head coach. But fun story while it lasted. But let's get to upset special week 11. Upset special for week 11.
I kind of hate myself for saying this, but I think the Raiders could beat the Broncos. I mean, it's not a crazy thing to say. I mean, we just spent the last couple minutes shitting on the Raiders, but the Broncos are just as bad, if not worse. So that could be an ugly game. That could be another, 13-10 type game. The Raiders certainly have the capability to score more points, but I don't know what they've been doing. Broncos got a great defense, but they can't put up points either. So I think the best chance for an upset, probably the Raiders over the Broncos.
I agree. I want to take the Titans over the Packers because I feel like that is kind of mishandicapped. The line's kind of wrong there, but Packers coming off a big win over the Cowboys. I'm going to go back to that with the Cowboys. Vikings as 1.5-point dogs to the Cowboys. I'll go with the Vikings in that one. Granted, that's almost a pick 'em at this point. So if I had to go with a larger spread upset, I would go with let me see here, line. No, I'm kidding. Maybe I'll go Bears over Falcons.
Yeah, I was going to say that's definitely the other one that I was looking at. So
Bears over Falcons. Bears are 3-point dogs right now, or at least that's what they opened at. But we've seen what Justin Fields can do these last 2 weeks. He has like more rushing yards than the running backs in the last 2 weeks in his 2 games, which is pretty crazy. He's doing everything he can to win football games for Chicago, and Chicago is doing everything they can to lose football games, which isn't a good marriage, but hopefully they can figure it out and start to put some of the pieces together to win, because I think they've lost their last 2 games by a combined 4 points. And like Kyle mentioned earlier, Cairo Santos missing an extra point to lose the game to the Lions. Lions win 31-30 in that one. I think this is the week against the Falcons defense that has shown nothing impressive throughout the course of the season. So maybe the Bears continue to build with Justin Fields and he can continue to put on a show. And if Justin Fields is your fantasy quarterback right now, you're going to the playoffs because he is putting up 35. I played against him last week in fantasy and I was like, I'm losing no matter what my team does. Put up 40 points. So, but anyways, anything else from you before we sign off, Kyle?
No, I mean, it's crazy how fast the NFL season goes. We wait all year for it to get here, and then it's here. And it's just the second the games are over, we're talking about the next ones, and it just goes so fast. I've enjoyed it. A lot of weird NFL stuff going on. I feel like we mentioned, some of the parity within the divisions. I guess even if the divisions suck, it's still parity like the NFC South. But, yeah, it's been an interesting season, and I look forward to the last 2 months of it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanksgiving coming up next week snuck up on us. And then if you're already not into Christmas spirit, you're getting into Christmas spirit, going to see the White Christmas play at the Alhambra here in Jacksonville before Thanksgiving, which feels kind of anti-Christmassy to me, seeing a Christmas play before Thanksgiving. But It's what we had to do to make it work for the schedule. So that's where we're at. But you're exactly right. NFL season's flying by. College season's flying by. 2 regular season weeks left, and then conference championship weekend, first weekend in December before bowls get announced. Going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out in that sport. But appreciate you being here again for episode 141. And if you're listening on the go, thank you. Find us on your preferred podcast streaming platform. If you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe, and definitely share our content. Tell your friends about us, because we give it to you straight. We give it to you real. We don't try and sugarcoat any of the Jaguar talk that we have. It's factual, statistical analysis from the team. So go enjoy the rest of your pre-Thanksgiving week 11. Your Jaguars bye if you're a Jaguars fan. But whatever you do, go make this world a better place and take care.
How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man?